Okay, so the first thing that we're going to look at in this video is the monitor we're going to be using, which is a BENQ 1080p 60 Hz monitor. It's important if you're buying a top-end graphics card, if it's a 4K gaming graphics card, or it's just for 60 frames per second at 1080p, that your monitor can do the job. This one's a budget monitor, about £110. You can get it on Amazon. BENQ, I'll put the model number in the YouTube description as well, so you can check it out yourself. This is the case, which has the side panel off. That's the window there. You can swap these side panels over if you want the window on the other side. It's pretty much toolless, apart from you'll need a Phillips screwdriver to screw in the power supply and the motherboard itself. It's an ATX form factor. It's got four 3.5-inch bays, or you can use them as 2.5-inch with adapters, which do come with it. You've got two optical drive bays as well. I'm going to move this back fan up to the top here because I've got an aftermarket cooler for the processor, which I'm going to point that way so it's exiting out the back. And then I haven't got the other fan at the moment, but there will be one going in the front here, which will pull the air in, and then it'll be pushing out the top, and the graphics card will also be pushing the air up as well. So what we'll do now is get started on the actual motherboard. So we'll crack on with that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to look at is the motherboard and a bit of safety as well, just before we get started on putting any components on. On the left there you'll see there's an anti-static band. This strap will actually go around your wrist, and you can connect it to anything that's metal, ideally that goes to a ground. This is connected to the back of a metal plate on my monitor. The monitor itself will be grounded through the power supply, which is switched off. Never connect it to anything live. Alternatively, you can just touch the side of your case or anything with bare metal. Just make sure it's not painted. That's quite important, because obviously if it's painted, then any static won't discharge through it. So it has to be an unpainted metal part. It could be from your case or something like that, or a radiator. But generally, just do that every time before you pick up a component. So first thing I'll do is the processor, and I'm obviously going to put the strap on beforehand, but I will touch something as well just to make sure. Make sure your hands are clean as well. Just give them a wash, make sure they're completely dry. You don't want to be touching anything on the motherboard with wet hands, or you don't want to be touching the processor either. So as you can see, the motherboard is laying on a sheet of cardboard from a pad. This is just to make sure there's no static on the surface. People tend to lay it on top of the static bag that comes with the motherboard, but the actual bag itself isn't anti-static on the outside, it's only on the inside. So just bear that in mind. You'll hear different stories about what people do themselves. They'll say they've never used anything and they've never had any problems, but it's always worth taking precautions. If you're spending a lot of money on building a computer, you don't want to sort of destroy anything that you're using, so just be careful. So we'll now just zoom in on the motherboard and get started on that. This is a GIGABYTE Z97P motherboard. Budget motherboard comes in at about £55 to £60 on Amazon. Meets the requirements for everything that we want to do, so we'll get started on this. It is a Intel socket processor that's going on this, so I believe it's a 1150 socket, and it's relatively simple to fit. So first thing I'll run through is how to do that using the clips here. So I'll just get started on that and grab the processor. Okay, first thing I'll show you is the processor that we're going to be using today. It's an Intel Core i5 processor. It's a 4690K, and here you should be able to see the socket LGA1150. It's got a core clock of 3.5 gigahertz, which is plenty for what we're going to be doing. The actual chip here, there we go. So this is the chip. The focus might not be too good because of the lighting, but this is the chip that's going to be going in, and this is the cooler that comes with it as well. We're not going to be using this. We've got an aftermarket one which I'll run through later, but you can use this, but we've just got an aftermarket one just in case we do want to overclock or anything in the future. But I'll just show you how to put the processor in. First thing that we'll do is just remove the clip upwards on this. Just pull it towards you and then pull it back, and that opens up the processor sort of cover. The processor doesn't actually clip in. You don't have to push it down, it does just rest in, and you should always pick up the processor, as I'll show you, by the edges. Try not to touch the top if you can, because on that silver part you're going to be putting on your thermal paste, which if you have got oily hands or anything on your hands sticky, you'll create hot spots on it. So just be careful, try not to get anything on there. You'll see on the processor itself, if I can get this in zoom for you, that it does have little grooves around the edge, which match up with the grooves on the motherboard, which I will show you in a second. So as you can see, those grooves will correspond with the actual socket as well. So this processor will just rest in, which I'll do now. I'm just going to place this in, maybe a second. Okay, so that's the processor in. As you can see, it's just slotted in nicely. When I pull the cover back down, the clip will just pop off anyway, or the cover, the little plastic cover on top will just pop off. So I'll just show you that now, won't be a second. So that can come down, pull it back, pull this down, and that's it, the cover pops off. I'll just remove that, and then it does just slot back underneath like that. And that's it, that's your processor held in place. So the next thing that I'm going to show you is the RAM, which we'll put in next. Here we have the RAM, which is HyperX Fury RAM. It's 2 sticks of 4 gigabytes, which we're going to run in a dual channel formation, which means that we'll be having 2 sticks running in the correct slots on the motherboard. So they're color coded, so you can see 2 black, 2 grey. If you want to run it in dual channel, you must have the matching slots. There are some benefits to having it in dual channel. It does run slightly faster. If you only have 1 stick, that's fine, you can just put it in one of the slots. But if you want 16 gigs of RAM, try and buy it in 2. If you want a massive amount of RAM, like 64 gig or something, you haven't got enough space, then just work with what you have. Okay, when you're installing RAM, it can only go in one way, so you haven't got to worry about putting it incorrectly. If it is in the wrong way, it won't go. So if you force it, you'll know it'll feel very hard to put in. I'm going to use the 2 grey channels as they're the furthest away from the processor itself. So you just pull the little clips down on the side, pull them right back, and then the RAM just slots in. That's in, and it's pulled the clips over already as well. It's always a good sign that it's gone in fine. And then we'll just grab the next one. Here we go. So again, both clipped in nicely. Clips have come up. And that's the RAM installed. So as I say, make sure it's in a dual channel. If you have 2 sticks of RAM, must be in the color coordinated slots. As I mentioned earlier, with this processor we're going to be using a aftermarket cooler, which is this one here. It's the Hyper TX3 Evo. So there is a bigger brother of this, which is the Hyper Evo 212, although I had to go for this one because the fan height would have been too much for the case. This one comes in, I think, at about 140 millimeters, so it's tight anyway, but it fits perfectly, and I say for overclocking it's much better than the standard cooler. Obviously, to fit this fan, you have to look in the manual. There are some clips that go on the bottom of the feet which match the motherboard, so you'll have to take a look at that and make sure that's all fitted properly, but you'll have to refer to your individual manual. With it comes Cooler Master thermal paste, which goes onto the processor. There's 2 different methods really. Either you can do a P shape in the middle, or you can do a cross. I'm going to do the cross method as it seems to be the best one, so I'll just get prepared for that. Whatever you do, don't put the paste on and then use a credit card or anything else to spread it over the top of the processor. If you do that, you'll probably get air inside the thermal paste, and it may end up causing sort of hotspots on your processor. So easiest way to do it, which I'll just run through now, is to do the cross method. So just be careful when you're doing it. Okay, so that should be plenty for the cooler to sit on top of, so I'm just going to grab that and get prepared for it. Okay, so as you can see, I tidied my paste a little bit. It did go a bit more on one side, and I've just wiped around the edge with a cotton bud and a little bit of alcohol on that, but obviously try not to do it if you can. You might be able to do it better than me. It takes a bit of practice trying a bit of cardboard if you've got plenty of thermal paste. If not, have a look at some other reviews as well. So now we're going to fit the cooler on top. It does just sit on top like this. There's a sticker on the bottom which you will have to remove, which I'll just show you here. There's a sticker here, so we'll just take that off. It's really important, you don't want that on there. And then these feet that go on top, they will just clamp in. They push into the board. There's already holes for them, which you can see just around here. There's a little hole there which they go into, so I'm just going to do that now. And the feet just push down. Okay, that's the aftermarket cooler installed, so it's all clipped in place. There is a cable which comes off of this, which you can see here. This is the fan header. Luckily the fan header is around the top on this motherboard, so it's just this white one here, and this means that the actual BIOS will control the CPU fan. So this must go into the CPU one so it can control how much speed it needs as you're running the computer. There are some other fan spaces on the motherboard, but they are just for case fans, so I'm just going to clip this one in. Okay, so that's all clipped in. So before we actually put in the motherboard into the case, I'm just going to prepare the case first of all. Two things have got to be done. One is the I/O faceplate, which is this, which goes into here. It actually gets pushed in from the other side, pushing it from the inside, and it clips in place. And the power supply gets mounted down the bottom. First of all, I'm just going to put this into the case, so this I/O plate. So you just push this in from the back. Okay, so that's all nice and firmly in place now. Can be a bit fiddly sometimes depending on the case that you get. Some are better than others. This one's, I say, a budget case, so you might find some components are a bit flimsy. But now we'll move on to the power supply and get that fitted in the bottom. Okay, so this is the power supply we're using for this build. It's a Corsair CX600M, which is 600 watt power supply, which meets the needs of the graphics card and all the components that we're using. It's a modular power supply. There's only two cables that are fixed on it, which I will show you when I'm fitting it. It's just the power supply. All the other power supplies that you need for graphics card and any other components you can put in individually, and the benefit of that is that you don't have hundreds of cables going through your case. Back when I used to build computers a long time ago, it was all fixed, so if you didn't use the cables, they were all hanging about inside the case, and it was quite messy. But nowadays everyone wants something that looks really good, and all these cases are customizable, so that's really good. So I'll just get the case in position, and then we'll get this power supply fitted in. So here we have the power supply ready to go in. You will need a Phillips screwdriver for this, and the screws that go in the back here to hold the power supply in, they should come with your case and not your power supply. One thing to note is that these are the fixed cables here, and these are the slots for the modular power. You want this fan, which will suck air in, on the bottom. Particularly on this one, it's got an air vent on the bottom with a dust mesh on there as well. Probably want to clean that quite regularly, as it will pick up a lot of dust if you've got it on your carpet, but I'm going to lay mine on hopefully a piece of wood or something like that. So I'll just lay this in the bottom. Okay, I'll just move this case around so you can see that it's fitting nice and flush in the bottom there. and I'll now just screw this in. The actual screws that you use for the power supply are the same ones that you use for the motherboard, so just check your manual. Should all come bagged up, and they normally have a different slot size or a different sort of pattern on the screws, so that you can differentiate between the ones you need to use for other parts in the case and for the ones you use on the power supply. So I'll now just go and get these screwed in. As you can see, label's facing the right way. That's a good sign that it's actually sitting the right way up, and I'll just grab the screws and get these put in. And just the last one to go in now. So that's all done. That's like, just check your screws first before you put any in, and just make sure they are for the power supply and not for something else on the case. The next thing I want to show you is just where I've moved the fan that was at the back of the case. As you remember at the start of the video, it was located at the back over here, and I've just taken that out and moved it to the front. So this will now pull in air into the case, and then there will be a processor fan at the back pushing out, and I'm going to get another fan to go on the top of the case, but I'll probably do that in another video. With the fan that goes in here, there is a change of screws, and they're long fan screws that come in through this side and screw in this way. The other screws are for the back of the case, so I think that's going to work better pulling cold air in. There are some vents on the edge of the case, which I'll show you a bit later as well. But the next thing I'm going to do is install the hard drive and the optical drive. Okay, next thing I want to show you on this case is just how to put the optical drive in. So what we have is a just standard DVD player and DVD writer, nothing too special, just really for installing games and operating systems, that sort of thing. So these are toolless sort of inserts for these drives, so they just push in and click into place. So you just line it up, give it a push, and that's it, it's clicked in. And if you want to remove it, there's a little tab here which just push down and pull it out. So it's very easy, all clips in. The next one we'll look at is the hard drive, which is pretty much exactly the same, just down here. So I'll just zoom in and get that prepared as well. These just come out there, again they're toolless, so just literally pull the pins in together, and that pulls out your hard drive tray. Hard drive we're using is a Western Digital 1TB hard drive, 7,200 RPM. I didn't go for solid state as we don't really need it for the gaming that we're going to be doing. But this is just very simple, just clicks in. Just a quick look, just have to line it up. Just try to see in the light here. So, okay, that's the drive all clipped into its case. Here you have your power supply and your SATA cable, which we will look at fitting later. But now this can just slot back in. So that's hard drive in. Good thing is that the cables come right out the back. So they come right out the back, around the other side of the case, and then I can loop it through here later, which will keep the cables neat and tidy. And then we'll show you how to plug it into the motherboard as well. But the next step, now we've got all these parts in, is to actually get the motherboard in. Now you can see here, the GTX motherboard is actually fitted in. It was really hard to record it because it's quite fiddly, and my hands were in there, my head was in there, so you wouldn't have been able to see it anyway. But on the actual case itself, you have, on this particular motherboard, you have 6 sort of razors, which are on the back of the case itself, and there's corresponding holes for the motherboard to sit on. Sometimes you have to actually screw the little placeholders on, which pushes the motherboard up. Sometimes they're already fitted. On this case, they were already fitted, which was quite handy actually for this size motherboard. And the only reason you'd really need to remove them if they're pre-fitted is if you was using a smaller motherboard. You might use something like a micro ATX board, or even smaller than that. As you can see, when I fitted the aftermarket cooler, the fan is exhausting out the back. We've got the front fan down here, which will pull in air, and then I'm going to get a top fan here, which will just take out any any air that is built up in there, but we'll go to the top, and obviously heat rises and it'll be exhausted out the top of the case. So now what I'm going to do is just put the remainder of the other screws in. I've put one in already, and the trick when putting these in is to obviously not screw them all down very tightly all at once. You want to put one in and then screw the others in one by one, so that you get a gradual tightening up of the board equally all over the board, and that saves any stress on it. What I'm going to do now, just to make it easier before I put anything else in, is I'm going to install the front fan power supply. It's a 3-pin, this one. It goes into a system fan slot, which you'll see in your motherboard manual, so just take a look on there and you'll see it in there. This one's located just here, and it's 3 pins, which you can hopefully see there if it zooms in. If I go ahead and connect this, it only goes in one way, so if you force it, you'll know that it's not going in, and you can change to swap it around the other way. So I'll just get this one connected in. Okay, so that's all connected in, and what I can do is I'll pull this cable here back from the other side of the case, and that'll keep the cable neat and tidy. And what I've also done is I've pushed the power cables for the power supply back through the other side of the case, and then I will then come back in through another part of the top and get those connected as well. First one that we're going to do is the larger power, ATX cable, which goes into here. There is a 12-volt one at the top as well, but the first one I'm going to do is the larger connector, and I'll get that installed now. So we're going to install the ATX connector now. This is the, I believe, 24-pin connector. I'm just going to put this into this slot. There's a little clip on this side, the clip just here, which will go on this side. So I'm going to mount this down now. So that's all clipped into place. The next one that will be is the 12-volt smaller connector, which will go at the top. Here we have the back of the case, so I'll see it laying down flat. You can see the rear of the hard drive here. I've just plugged in one of the SATA power cables here. What we need is the actual data cable as well to go in there, so I'm just going to grab that. Around here somewhere. Here we go. Just try and put things a bit closer to hand, I suppose, but here we go. So this is the SATA actual data cable. This plugs in, maybe the other way. Plugs in on there like that. So now you have your data cable and you have your power cable, and that will run through here. Or through one of these slots, which will keep it nice and tidy. What I'll also do is, on this power supply cable, it does have an extra power cable, or along the line it does on the cable, so you can run it off to other components. So I'll run one of these off to the CD drive, and that way it saves me having to run another cable from the power supply. So I'll just switch the case around now and show it plugged in the other side. So I've connected up the SATA power to the DVD player, which runs off the same power cable as the hard drive, so that's to minimise the amount of cables that we need. Now I'm just going to fit the 2 SATA data cables, these 2 here, which go into these here. They can go in any position. We're not running the hard drives on RAID or anything like that, so I'll just go ahead and plug these in. Do this one first actually. I'm in a bit of an awkward position here. Just have a quick look. And just put the other one in as well. So they're both now clipped in. So that's the hard drive, DVD player, powered up, data cable connected. Cables run behind. Obviously the cables look very messy at the moment, but they will be tidied up afterwards, which I'll show you once the build's complete. I'll show you the back of the case and how I've cable tied everything and kept it sort of neat and tidy. I've put the rest of the connectors in. I've done a bit of cable management, made sure a lot of the cables were pushed through the back of the case and then come back through the other side, and just kept it a bit more tidy. One of the connectors that I've left off for the moment is the USB 3 connector, which connects to the ports at the top of the case. Only reason is that the graphics card that's going in will run across here, and it might just get in the way when I'm fitting it. So I've removed that one, and I'll just grab the graphics card so you can take a look at that. This is the GTX 970 Windforce edition. It's the G1 Gaming card, probably the fastest one in the GTX 970 range. It's overclocked. I'm going to post a few more specs on this in the YouTube description. It's got a Windforce logo on the side that lights up, which looks really good in the case, and it also has a backplate, which is a bit unusual for some of the cards in this GTX range, but this one's a little bit more, about £280, but it does come with a backplate, so all recommended. So I'll just line up the case now, get a better shot, and you can show this. You'll be able to see this going into the PCIe slot, and then we'll connect it up to the power supply as well. So I'll just get this ready. Just before I fit the graphics card, I just want to show you something. Where this slot runs here, there's two grills on the back, which you'll see here. These have to be removed because it's a dual slot card, so it will take up two spaces. So what I'm going to do first is unscrew these. I won't show you that because it's very simple. The screws on the other side. I'm going to unscrew those first of all, and then we'll come back and get the card sort of slotted into the PCI slot. It's a PCI 16 slot as well, so we'll make sure that goes into the top one, which is the fastest one. You can run AMD Crossfire on this, but you can't run SLI. This is an SLI graphics card. So in the future, if I wanted to have two graphics cards, I would have to swap them or get a new motherboard. But bearing in mind this motherboard's £50, it's a SLI one will probably be about 125, 130. So not much more expenditure, but something for the future if I wanted to run 4K or something a bit more extreme. So I'm just going to take these back plates off, and then we'll get the card in. Got the graphics card installed now. It took about 15-20 minutes. It was quite fiddly. Had to move out some of the fan power connectors and some of the cables that were underneath and on top, and just rerouted them, just so that there's nothing close to the back of the board or underneath where the fans are. It's quite important. So all I'm going to do now, I'm pretty much done. I'm just going to put the front of the case back on, tidy up the cables on the back, and then hopefully we'll get this fired up. So the next part will show it complete, side panel on, plugged in, and ready to go.